Okay, well look, first of all, I just want to say it's a great pleasure to introduce Haris tonight, who I've known since we were students together at the American Film Institute in 1994. And first of all, I just want to say it's no surprise to me to see the success that he's had as a cinematographer since then. From Enduring Love to Thor, Mamma Mia to Venus, Cinderella to Locke, Haris has shown an amazing ability to apply his skill to both huge studio movies and small independent projects, always bringing something new and experimental in his approach, as well as a great sensitivity to the material. And I think, again, we saw that here tonight. So, on to Denial, which we've just seen. Obviously, first of all, great work, and I think a very timely film, given what's been happening with Holocaust denial on the internet and our new era of alternative facts that President Trump has introduced. I guess, first of all, I wanted to ask you about when you first were sent the material and when you had your first meetings with the director, what was the sort of essence of what you pitched, how you wanted to approach this film and what you wanted to achieve photographically?
You know, it's a really, I think, historical, going through something that's a historical fact and dramatizing it is something that it's a great thing. It's a great kind of arena to have a discussion on the human condition about. But I think you ultimately, as a cinematographer, have to truly kind of feel an empathy for the lead character. And this was certainly something where, for me, the first thing I kind of felt was like, this is someone I kind of admire. I also saw some of Deborah's kind of lectures and seminars online, and they're really captivating. So I think of all the things, it was Deborah and how inspiring she was. And I guess when I met Mick, he had a similar passion for not just kind of Deborah as a human being and putting her forward, but the actual subject matter. And we kind of talked about how to make something that's set in rather a boring, environment. It's a courtroom drama. How do you make it engaging and not overdo it, and let the, it's quite a balance. We talked about that balance of making it engaging, making it a drama, and being true to kind of architecture and spaces, and letting it just sit comfortably somewhere that wasn't intrusive.
And in terms of, it's predominantly a location film, and obviously, some have to be real locations, which we saw. Do you want to talk a little bit about what challenges or opportunities those real locations presented to you?
Yeah, we decided to shoot digitally, although we shot a little bit of film on it. One of the things I thought about the film was that it rests in that time where there was no digital, and it was really a film era, 94 to 2000. And kind of my recollection of what films looked like then that would maybe in kind of show a look was kind of Kodak 93, that 200 tungsten stock. So that's kind of was a basis for what I wanted to look at. But I also thought, well, it was the first time that people started kind of successfully using natural lighting and in a really great kind of in an interior dark set. So it was about just kind of making it feel like a practically lit film. But of course, in reality, it wasn't. We did have to augment that. A lot of little LED strips. Dan Lowe, my gaffer's here, and he had a whole array of kind of flexible LED panels that we used. Balloons. We used some bigger units, but really we went into a space and said, how would natural light fall in here, and what can we kind of improve on?
Yeah, I mean, as usual, I think something I always see in your work is that you're very concerned with textures and really kind of from the very first scene in her classroom, where you have the light, very strong, quite hard, warm light coming in with the kind of shape of the window. You know, it feels like you're always very conscious of trying to, like, for the lighting to have some real three-dimensional qualities.
Yeah, and it also, you know, we were on, you know, running like the, you know, like horses on this. It was a low-budget film with a very demanding schedule. Those first shots were a real sunset, and then we lost the light. So the remainder shots were kind of lit very quickly to match what the sun was doing.
Well, again, I thought it was an interesting decision because, you know, some people might have been standing in that situation going, well, it's kind of like, it's quite frontal, it's like, but it's a very strong look, actually, you know, it works really, really well. But, you know, one might be tempted to kind of go, oh, why don't we diffuse it? And, you know, then we can keep it looking more believably once it starts getting dark. But you embraced that. I mean, generally, it's a sort of bolder decision, maybe.
Yeah, it could have bitten me right up the bottom, though. It's a fine line. We just about got away with it, I think. And also, but we got away with it on the day in kind of exactly how much time we had, the page count, etc. You kind of make informed decisions, but you kind of, I've been in so many situations where you have done that and you've kind of said, oh, I'm not going to risk it, and then you regret it. So it also had something, I think what really sparked was just my memories of shooting, and you know, that's when we were kind of students, really. But like, do you remember coral filters and or tobacco, all those things? So it kind of, when I saw it, it did remind me of that, and it kind of, I just remembered certain things of that time that, to me, kind of would give a sincerity to it, maybe. So texture, I think, can make you, yeah, I think that's what it does. It makes it feel sometimes a bit more sincere.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose on the subject of texture, it's interesting that you have, you know, you've continued to use film on some projects, maybe the bigger projects, predominantly in your recent work. So Cinderella, the Murder on the Orient Express, you just finished shooting on 65mm. But do you, I mean, like with this film, for instance, was it an easy decision to go with a digital format, or was that something that was budgetarily led, or did it just feel like it was the right decision for the project?
I think in the end it was. I had, one of the reasons was kind of, I did want to go with a high ASA rating, a sensitivity that digital does have. This was one where I really did toy with the film idea, and 16mm and things like that. For example, Eye in the Sky and Locke, for me, were certainly going to be digital films.
But it was appropriate.
It was absolutely appropriate. Eye in the Sky was about digital capture technology and the way kind of we see the world right now in terms of surveillance. So it had something that was definably digital. I think this was one where it was, I did want to try, and that's where I kind of ended up. I said, I want to try and get a dated, particularly dated film look that were historically kind of in a place through digital.
So once you'd made that decision, how did you decide on the route that you did?
Well,
I mean, I know that you have been quite a fan of Red versus Alexa generally. Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, no, weirdly, I mean, I do love both cameras equally. I can't really say it's one or the other. There's a kind of a sharpness. I've always, and we've talked about this many times, kind of there's a sharpness that you get with a Red camera that I really love, but there's a grain that comes with it too. And I find that there's a kind of a different type of a grain structure with an Alexa, and a different kind of a sharpness that comes with it too.
Well, or softness, as you keep telling me.
Yeah, which is a good thing in some films and not such a good thing in other films. And I also was, you know, the late great Haris Zambarloukos always loved a kind of use of kind of untreated, unluttered,
kind of flat-looking
digital capture, and we tried a bit of that here, and then graded that, and I think that, you know, he's the guy that I first saw, like with Zodiac and films like that, that just I really thought this is digital, that's fantastic.
I think he was doing something with it that actually he was making a kind of a thing of its digitalness for the first time, a positive thing.
And I think in a way that's different from what, say, Anthony Dodd Mantle did. And I think it was more, you mentioned texture. He really embraced it. When you embrace the texture of it in that way, and in a way, to some extent, the flaws of it, you get something that's as interesting as working with the flaws in film. And that kind of manipulation, that kind of exposure, and you just play with it. I mean, I think sometimes I look at, I was watching it and going, ugh, I did too much or too little, or, but I think you've got to be in that spirit and kind of let things go or not, just to, like you do with film, to make a picture interesting and not too polished and not too, we were very weary in the grade of not, I think again, I think I've talked about this with you before, Jake, but kind of not going for, however stunning it is, the allure of that, what I call a Ridley Scott look, which is just, he and his cinematographers are so good at it, kind of an entire, I think, world of cinema has been lured into a particular look, and being a little softer with things.
I think it's always in danger of overwhelming the material, and particularly with a film of this type, it would be completely inappropriate. So, I think there's a very nice kind of feeling of restraint to a lot of it, particularly the section in Poland, which I love the feeling of the exteriors at Auschwitz and Birkenau. I mean, that must have been a fairly difficult place to film.
I mean, it's emotionally difficult to work there. You actually, and we had I did the recce there, so I had some time before, but for the rest of our crew, they hit the ground running, and it's not a kind of place you just show up with a camera and start. So we kind of allowed a little bit, but not much on our budget time to, but we were very well prepared for it. Not all of it was shot there, a lot was shot here. Hamish, who I think is here, shot some great second unit for us. The early morning kind of wides. We were shooting Tom walking the perimeter while Hamish was shooting that. So we had very limited time. We were given unprecedented access, but we could never put our actors in Auschwitz. So they could be around the perimeter, but when they go to pray by Crematorium 2, we built that set here. And that's why you see all the double negative kind of credits at the end. It was a mixture of two different sets here, real Auschwitz. We could go into Auschwitz and shoot the displays, for example, but we could not put Tom there. Although they knew that we would eventually put we would shoot Tom in over here in that. Pretending to look at that display. And Tom had been to the display, he knew what he was going to do, and he's an actor on a kind of almost otherworldly...
and his performance is stunning.
Yeah, in terms of a perfectionism, it's kind of impossible, I think, to beat. And it's really effortless. He's kind of, if any of you have worked with Tom, he's kind of almost grumpy about his talent. It's
yeah, well, I'm guessing he just effortlessly comes in and it's all, Now, I did have a question I was just about to ask you. Yes, well, in fact, I was going to say, it was one of, I don't know if it was something that you'd planned. Sorry, but that was one of the very memorable images for me in the film, was the sort of the tear on the barbed wire, which you saw at first when you first had those montage of scenes, and you just think, oh, it's the early morning dew. But after the prayer, I thought it was a very powerful image? I don't know if it was something that you planned or it just kind of popped up when you...
That was Mick, you know, he really wanted that. He really, really, really wanted that, and we got it. And, he was very
heavy-handed, or you...
He was it was great. You know, he fought for certain. You know, I think between him and the producers and the and you know, having a writer like David Hare on board as well, there's a lot of kind of big names there that had an opinion, and I think Mick certainly fought for certain things that you know. I think the problem editing a film like this and shooting a film like this is it's a question of balance. How heavy-handed are you? How are you over-emotional? Are you under-emotional? You know, it's almost like...
Well, it's difficult because there are times when you know, there are certain things like the Harriet Walter character or the young lawyer when she's at home with the boyfriend where you sort of kind of thinking, some of this, I mean, you can sort of see what David is trying to say, but you're not entirely sure that it's achieved with enough subtlety. I mean, but it's really sort of nitpicking. Very happy to take any questions. Otherwise, we're going to keep on talking for the moment, but I don't want you people to think you have to wait until we sort of dry up. But I mean, I've got one sort of Anarchy question I really did want to ask you, because, you know, I always know if I'm watching a film that you've shot that there's a lot of intentionality with everything you do. You don't just let things happen. You know, I know that you think very deeply about the details. And I was sort of interested about your use of highlights or not use of highlights in this film, because I did notice there were places where you interestingly didn't. Like, for instance, the first meeting between Anthony Julius and Deborah Lipstadt in Atlanta, you didn't. But then, obviously, partly because of the nature of the practicals in the bar in Poland, they are there in her conversation with Tom Courtenay. But I mean, was there a kind of a sort of idea that you were following there, or was it just depended on sort of how you felt?
I really, well, you know, I'm obsessed with highlights, and I really love using them. It kind of, I like dark cinematography, but it's not something I really kind of. I like, when I watch a film, I like to see an actor's eyes to a certain extent and in a certain way. There was a real kind of push on the film for a certain amount of authenticity to costume and glasses, and in particular, vintage. I've never shot a film with so many glasses on. They're in every scene with, and even if one person has them, then the other, and they were, you know, one version. I usually ask for, on Orient Express we shot William Dafoe, he wears glasses, and I always ask for three, since Enduring Love and having to do Daniel Craig, I asked for three different types of lenses, a flat lens, a round lens with anti-glare, and a normal prescription. And depending on the shot, to get an highlight, I use
whichever one's appropriate.
Yeah. When you're on a low-budget film with, you know, about 30 actors all have glasses, and they've chosen authentic vintage glasses, you only get one. So I thought, well, instead of getting upset, I have a 2-year-old who just basically she just has a fit, and then she forgets about it the 2 seconds later. And you learn a lot about, you know, life watching a 2-year-old. So I decided to...
And a lot about patience.
Yeah. Have a fit on my own for 2 seconds, and then forget about it, and not do a lot of highlights, basically. I thought, this isn't the film to have highlights. You just can't. If you've accepted that. And I was quite clear about it. I said, I'm very happy to do this, but you do realize that it will have an implication. And this is the implication. And it was accepted. And I actually enjoyed not having highlights for, especially when I have to kind of use them so much. Kenneth Branagh is obsessed with highlights, probably as much as I am, so it's something we do with his films, and it was nice to do something different. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, on the subject of children, something that my 8-year-old son currently really loves doing is he likes to always know the least favourite thing that I've eaten or seen or done. So in the spirit of Reuben, I'm going to ask, what in the film is sort of the thing you look at with least affection? What do you wish you could have done differently?
Well, it was I knew from day one it was going to be the hardest thing, to shoot on the 3rd floor of a location, that office, where she's surrounded by 10 guys in suits, and you're trying to, I tried as much as I could to turn off the fluorescence above, and I kept fiddling with one lamp or another lamp, and you can tell that sometimes there's a fluorescent above someone, especially.
And then they move.
And then they move and all those things. And I look at them, I'm like, oh, it's so amateur. And it kind of bugs me.
But it feels like a real location, I think, I totally understand what you're talking about, but I think in that scenario, no one could look at it and go, oh,
I mean, we shot in a day with all those guys, 10 pages, all the coverage. You have to think of eye lines and things like that. It's just, I mean, that was a hard day. And Mick, really wanted to do a rain effect outside the 2nd floor.
Yes, he seems to think it rains a lot in England, evidently.
Bless him. Again, he's right. It looks great, but you're adding one more really difficult thing on a really difficult day. And I was fiddling with fluorescence on this. Yeah.
So I guess I've got one last question I can ask before we maybe see if we've got some questions out there. I'm interested to know, we did talk a little bit about this already, what, if any, sort of, because I know, also you're interested in new equipment and new tools, and you talked with me a little bit about stabilizer that you used on this. What generally, were there any tools that you came across that you used on this, and anything that you discovered that you were really pleased with or not pleased with? Yeah,
we used stabilizer, although you can't really tell. The shots were cut up, but it was really interesting using stabilizer. It's kind of a Movi, but I think on steroids. It comes with a technician. It's a really great bit of kit that allows an operator to hold a camera and have it gyro stabilized, and then someone else actually operates the wheels. So the movement of a camera and the operating of it is kind of disconnected. And we did certain shots that were
So the judge leaving his room to go to the courtroom to deliver the verdict, was that shot with that?
That was on Stabilite, and basically there were issues there of like the width. We couldn't have done it on Steadicam, for example.
Yeah, you certainly felt like you were very close to it.
Yes, and especially with anamorphics and the close focus on anamorphics. And what we did eventually do is then just carabiner the camera and hoist it to the top of the courtroom for the verdict. It was cut up. You see a little bit of the shot at the end, but you can also do things like build ramps and steps, and it's a great bit of kit. I mean, the master of it is Henry Brehm. He's been using it a lot, and he's used it on Tarzan a lot. I know he's been using it on Guardians of the Galaxy 2 a lot. He's done some amazing stuff with it, and the shots have stayed as single shots. Ours were kind of cut up, but it was great to try something out. The other thing, we used boroscopes quite a lot on for some of those kind of, again, they're not so much there, but the flashbacks and going through the peeping hole. We used a hand-cranked film camera for that as well, which is fun to do. So, yeah, we played around with it. And some black magic as well. A lot of the video footage, I used my black magic, because some of the stuff could be authentic video equipment at the time, but just, it was impractical to do all of it. So we just threw stuff at it, and played with what we could, and did a nice test period, and came out with what kind of we thought was useful, and then in the end, you know, it's in the edit, it's a different story. But probably the thing I hadn't tried that I really enjoyed from this was the Stabilite and the kind of Panavision's hand crank camera.
And so, was this the last? This was the last film you did before Orient Express, is that right? So, how has the sort of transition back to that kind of mega production been?
Well, I pretty much started afterwards. I did non-consecutive prep. I mean, it was the same team, same AD. Really, we just kind of finished one thing and started the next. You put on a different hat for every film. It's kind of...
I mean, how would you characterize it? Do you think it's sort of more kind of managerial thing with the...
There's certainly, I think you're just as, you still have to manage a kind of, people management is on every level. It's not, I think, on size.
It's more the organisation, I guess, I'm getting at, that, you know, you have to kind of multiple units and things like that. You sometimes have to start handing off certain responsibilities.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I hand off responsibility a lot. I mean, I don't just do it a little. I'm really careful with my crew. I love my crew, and I hand them an immense amount of responsibility. I don't see the point in hiring people and then sitting on their shoulder. You know, you're still a director of photography, you're still a cinematographer, you know, you've got this department that you run, but you have to, and that's why I like long-term relationships with a crew, is that it carries on. I mean, Dean Thompson, my first AC, kind of was as impeccable, and what I love about Dean is he's as impeccable with 65mm as he is with, you know, my Blackmagic camera and everything else we use. He loves the idea that you know, a piece of equipment can create an image, you know, and you've got to kind of get people, I think, that relish it in that way.
And I mean, do you feel like after your last couple of projects, you still feel that you're happy to kind of switch between film and digital depending on the project, or are you finding yourself kind of swaying more one way or the other now?
No, I think as long as I can do both, I will do both, you know. I certainly kind of would kind of believe that there's a place where you have to get the best of both. Like, I'm not a film purist, like a lot of people are. You know, I believe in digital intermediates. I think it's an acquisition process. It's not you know, right now it's not a finishing process. However much I've loved doing photochemical prints, I think what we should go for is a really great universal digital project. You know, it's the same when you watch on your laptop to when you watch it at the Odeon, that we have to find a way where across the board it all looks the same. And I think you can only do that in the digital world.
Yes, I mean, because, I mean, what do you think about the people who are still insisting on photochemical finishes for the analog films?
It's, you know, for me that's difficult. It's kind of not what I would, I don't know how they do it, really. I can only speak from my perspective, and I would find that kind of difficult. Yeah, difficult to manage, and impractical for me, and not the best way to do things. I mean, I would like to do some really kind of different things with digital work, and I've asked Labs and Kodak about this, and I mean, if I had a digital film, what I would like to do is actually make a digital negative and rescan it. And then I promise you it will look very different to just finishing it as a DI. And I think it would have, we do it digital intermediates the other way, why can't we do it the reverse? It's the cheapest.
Yeah, because you only make it exactly the length
You're
of
only
the
making
film.
10,000 feet. and I think it would look stunning.
Have you ever tested it?
No. Someday someone will let me do it.
Well, I'm very happy if we wanted to take any other questions from other people out in the audience now. We've got a couple of microphones, I think, standing by. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask? Nigel.
You had a great script, David Hare. You had great actors. You had yourself. Tell us about your relationship with the director. Because it seemed to me, if I may say so, that the film developed from being what I would call a television film to more a realistic film. And I wondered whether your relationship had changed, the big close-ups that you had, whether they were planned right from the beginning or whether the director came around to your way of thinking.
No, I had a really good relationship with Mick. It was, Mick has made some great work. He's a great documentarian, a great filmmaker. He's done a lot of things, but he did have certain ideas, and I find this is quite common with directors, especially with material like this and actors like this, that the it's almost like a magnet to iron filings with a close-up. You literally have to crowbar them away, and it's inevitable. Nigel, it's an absolute inevitability, especially when they're that. I'll never forget when we were prepping for Venus with Roger Michel, who's a really cinematic director, and the films we watched, all about wide lenses. We watched Manhattan and films like that. The minute Peter O'Toole stepped and said his first line, and he is so mesmerizing, Roger just says, "Bring me the biggest fucking lens we have. I want a close-up." And it's absolutely understandable. So with Mick, he'd seen films I liked. We talked about films we loved. And he's made some very cinematic films. And he's worked with Andrew Dunn, God's sake, a master. If Mick learnt how to do a wide shot or a mid shot, I'm sure it's Andrew that taught him that. We found a language, but we found the language really through shooting it. The prep was, it's never the real thing, and you never have enough time. But I think when he did listen to certain kind of ideas, it's because I listened to him too. And I think that's how a real relationship should work.
In the corner up here.
Thank you. I was just curious, what films did you watch before you started to film? What were your references?
Well, for me, the best courtroom drama I've ever seen, in terms of cinematography, is Civil Action. It's a Steve Zalian film that Conrad Hall shot, and I was the camera trainee on it. So one of the reasons why I was very attracted to, apart from I love to make political films. This is a subject matter that I love, and a person I admire. I really wanted to kind of get that kind of inspiration and remember kind of how difficult it was for Connie to do a courtroom drama. So I took a lot of inspiration for that. Mick was in love with Ida. It had just come out, and so was everyone else in this room, probably, me included. And Polish cinema. I think Polish cinema for us was an inspiration. They have a brilliant tradition, from Kieslowski to Zanussi, to kind of taking rooms and people and turning it into something really special. I think, Jake, if you remember, there was a Sobocinski film we saw at Camerimage a Zanussi film, The Seventh Room. Does anyone remember it? I think we were.
Was it that?
God, it's just, I've never seen. Again, it looked like a Vermeer, and it was just rooms. I mean, it's unbelievable how they. So, we never ever got even close to that, but we were inspired by that. I think that was the, Kieslowski films, Ida for sure, and for me, A Civil Action was a big influence.
Yeah, I just wanted to know about, you're going about the highlights and whether you had a particular light or a particular technique to always get that, whether it's a light on the matte box or whether you're just using a practical somewhere to get the highlight.
I couldn't say that there's one thing I always do. And the things with highlights is they never lie. It's either there or it isn't. And it's a really obvious thing, I believe. And I think it's something you have to test early on. The best highlights are the ones that happen naturally because, I mean, I get so obsessed, I wonder if you can see whether it's square or round or a line or you can see the dots or it gets quite obsessive.
That was what I liked in the bar is you're naturally getting them from those globes.
And I think that's the best thing. I think I do have a tendency to light a lot more from below than from above. And one of the reasons is it's easier to get a naturally occurring highlight from that. You're in danger of not being as flattering, so you have to really, I think it's almost like a craft of centimeters and millimeters in that respect. But I'm always looking out for it. Like even if it's an off-screen moment, what catches an actor's eye? So I couldn't pinpoint to something I always use. Some people like Chinese lanterns, or I've used all of them. Yeah.
Down here in the fifth row. It's coming
in. So you use anamorphic lenses, and you said that you use only one set of lenses. I'm wondering, one set, because you said you usually have flats and different kind of lenses, but you had only one sort of lenses this time. I'm wondering what was your thinking process for choosing those lenses and not others?
Well, we used, basically it was down to, and I always kind of go through this, a little bit of testing on what's flattering, a little bit of testing on what's practical.
And then the thing you always knew you liked in the first place.
And the thing you always like in the first place. But I weirdly like every single type of anamorphic lens. I have to say, I love all of them. But it would be stupid to go and try and do this on primos. They weigh 20 kilos a lens and about 3 foot long. This would have to, this could only be either G series or C series. So you balance that out. I knew kind of where it was going to end up. And G series have a particular look that I like, and so does C. They're almost in a, if it's practicality, it's got to be a G series. But those are the things I was testing for. But they could only fall within one of those two categories. I don't think even E series would have worked given our spaces and locations. And one of the things, I don't go so much for what is on a technical side, how fast the lens is, but the biggest thing for me is close focus. And almost always I get Dan Sasaki to tweak a lens. I usually lose a third or 2/3 of a stop, but I gain maybe a foot in close focus, in the minimum focus. And I find that that's just a very useful thing to have, and a very useful thing in trying to get a get to use a slightly wider lens like a 35 or 40 or a 50 for a close-up. And that lets you be kind of flattering and still, and be close and still see a room or a space around you. So those were the kinds of things I was looking for in this.
Anybody else?
Sorry, I still have a question. A very practical thing on this film. How did you work together with the director? Was it in the morning? Did he do the blocking, and did you choose the shots, or was there a collaboration on that, or was it different every day? And is that very different when you do a film like the last one you did, a very big production, or was it the same?
No, we definitely kind of blocked and then collaborated on what we thought the coverage was and how we needed to tackle it. And kind of a priority of lists as well. What you really need, what you can get away with, what's an interesting way of doing it. But I think there is only one kind of, to some extent, there's only one methodology. Jake and I kind of learnt together. So we had a teacher called Steve Lana. He shot the original Roots, his brilliant cinematographer. He gave us a 3-page document. Jake is so methodical, I'm sure he has it filed away somewhere. And I've lost it for sure, and I'd love to see it again. But it's kind of stuck on my brain how Steve kind of had a really structured way to a day in terms of this is how you block, this is how, you've got to write it down, you've got to do a little diagram, you've got to kind of, that's how you make a day. And I like that kind of a discipline during a day. It just informs people, and you're not constantly asking yourself questions. I have a very short, I'm like a goldfish. I need to write things down.
Well, I'm often amazed at the number of directors who, I mean, sometimes seem to kind of have this, I just want to watch the rehearsal and see what happens. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, but it's quite good to conceive like what you'd like it to be. You know, it might be completely different, but you can always help it be that thing if you put it together in your head. But you know, sometimes that becomes our job sort of on the spot.
Well, also you have to start learning to use the great skills of the crew, the script supervisor, the AD. They're there to help you. They should be right next to you when you do all these rehearsals and you think of lens sizes, etc. I mean, certainly with Ken, he loves that method as well, and we rehearse, we block, we look through a viewfinder with a lens, we mark a position. For example, Roger Pierce, our operator, you know, one thing I noticed that he does that's a really simple thing, but it's a mark of someone who's excellent at his job. He has a piece of chalk in his pocket at all times. He always, and he marks it on the floor. It's really simple, but you know, it's simple if you've if that's what you've done all your life, and it's a great thing. But a piece of chalk is as useful as a viewfinder to a great operator.
Well, I think, you know, the other thing is that, you know, one of the things they really drummed into us at AFI was that, you know, your decisions really had to be based on serving the story rather than on showcasing your own work, which I think, you know, clearly you demonstrated that here. And I think, you know, it's something that I certainly use every day I'm at work, you know, just really trying to make your decision. You know, you need something to help guide your decisions, I think. And so it's great to have something very, very simple, like, right, everything has to answer like something to do with what I think this piece of work is really about.
You know, I think a lot of the tension is that cinematographers feel is about, oh, what's the, you know, this kind of, it's not a tension between a director and a cinematographer. You've got to, it's a bit like, I think you've got to do what 2-year-olds do. If you're going to have a tantrum, have it, get on with it, and And I think the same applies for a director, really. But and a focus puller and an operator and a gaffer and a grip. It's just have
Here
your
in
inner.
England, we're not good with extreme expressions of emotion. So
Yeah.
people get it all like.
Yeah.
I've found elsewhere in the world, people are much happier to have a fight and then go.
Oh, yeah. On with it. Yeah.
Yes.
As the film starts, we're in, I think, Atlanta, and there is a sense of that we're in her element. I guess I kind of get like a Desperate Housewives kind of feel, just visually, I guess. And then we arrive in Britain, and it feels like a romanticized perception of Britain. But then we're in a courtroom, and it's very, I guess, straightforward, and it's as you would expect a courtroom to be. It's not, I guess, her perception of a courtroom. It's just the straightforward what a courtroom would look like. What were some of the things you thought about to kind of separate, separate what her, when she's in her element, and what kind of things did you think about to separate the two, I guess, if I did notice what I thought I noticed?
Well, the script certainly reads, and it was certainly an intention that, Deborah was out of her element in every way. So the problem is with that, you have to wait till the edit. So we shot certain things that established London and established Atlanta, and we had a certain look, but they're sketches, I would say. I think we gave it a bit more after the edit was there in terms of the grade and warmth and cold, etc. Only because I think that's how they edited it, in a way. There could have easily been a version that showed no exteriors. Despite having shot them, that always happens in a film, but you really could do this film without that much geography. And that might be an interesting film,
But it felt to me like, there were obviously certain decisions, like, in the scene with the lighting you don't love, it had a more kind of handheld, sort of uneasy feel, because she was clearly being sort of pushed around by this bunch of legal guys. I guess that was part of...
Well, Mick always said, red-headed, fiery woman versus black-suited men, that was certainly something that he kept repeating, so that we would all remember, in a way, that what we were doing, and you kind of had to do a little bit of that. Certainly, because all of that Atlanta footage, I think I lied to you, Phil, it was more than 3 shots, it was about 5 that we shot in Atlanta, but you had to infuse something in there, and kind of a certain amount of, basically, that kind of, what in the 90s was a coral filter was a little bit of a tweak in the grade for us. And all, that was from day one. I added that in the dailies with my DIT, so that was something that they'd gotten used to. I think that's another thing kind of that happens, is that people live with this edit for quite a while, and I think you've got to be willing to put in the extra hours and kind of get it to look a certain way, because if you just leave it as a haphazard kind of grade, people get used to it and find it very difficult to jump out of it. I kind of did a rather dark grade on the Penguin officers, and it stayed from it stayed from the dailies all the way to, they kind of grew to love it. It goes in your favor, not, whereas if I had
gone in and done that in the suite, they would have been like, it's a bit dark.
Yes. And I didn't do it kind of secretly behind anyone's back. I said, this would be something that we might put, and they said yes. Mick said, yes, do it in the, I like that. And he kind of ended up, it took him a while, and he knew he could get it get it back. But
and what was your process with that? I mean, had you set up a few LUTs that or were you kind of tweaking it scene to scene?
no, we set up LUTs, but they're not automated LUTs, and I always do exactly the same thing. I go into Goldcrest with my DIT and my grader, and I want the DIT and the grader to have had, the colorist to have had a rapport. So Callum Just was our DIT, Sam was our kind of colorist on the day for dailies, and Rob Pitsy and Lee were our kind of colorists on the final, and they'd all talked. And I think it's important so we created a LUT, but we did tweak it. But it wasn't one group of people doing it and then a different group of people finishing it.
And going, yeah, I don't know what all this stuff they did was, we'll start again.
Yeah.
Nigel again down the front.
Sorry about the second question, but I just want to ask Haris this. I just want to ask you whether or not, in your acceptance of things like flares, which once or twice made it quite obviously this was a digital production on what we've just seen, whether or not you're conscious of not making it digital and doing something about it, or do you just leave it go?
I think what's digital in a flare is the color, not the actual flare for me. But the way that digital clips in the highlights is a very different thing that happens when film clips. So you get a weird color out of the, that's what I would call, for me, a digital flare, as opposed to how much it actually flares. For some of the scenes with the photographers, and for the first scene, we used uncoated anamorphic lenses that flare even more, just to give that kind of an aurora kind of image out of that, and it comes with a lot of problems. You know, your contrast goes all over the place, but you have to embrace it. But the purple and the blue go into a really weird space in digital that they don't go to in film. And again, I think that idea that you allow kind of the digital capture to do its thing, it's the same with the flares. I think just not trying to, you know, key it and change the color. I just let it go.
Okay, well, if we don't have any last questions, I think we're going to wrap it up there. So I just want to say thank you very much to Haris.
Thank you, Jake.
And
thank you.